Chapter 4. From then on, every time Vash spotted Nick outside smoking, he gave a huge, friendly wave. Nick shot him sloppy salutes back. Whenever Livio saw him doing it, the teasing was merciless. Not just about whether or not Nick was flirting, but about the salutes themselves. He would yell like a drill sergeant about how bad Nick's posture was, what a mess his hair was, how scruffy he looked. Nick continuously flipped him off and attempted to give him noogies when he wasn't expecting it. Horsing around with Livio felt like being 10 again, but not in the horrible way that being 10 had actually been for both of them. On one late afternoon ride-along to a pickup at a nursing home, Livio said, "Can I bum a cigarette?" "Sure." Nick dug the packet and lighter out of his pocket and passed them over. Livio rolled his window half down and took his hands off the wheel at a red light to light up. "Didn't know you smoked." "I don't," Livio said, then took a drag and immediately gagged and coughed. "Whoa, calm down, what the hell are you doing then?" Eyes watering, Livio shook his head. "Fucking tar, man," he wheezed. "That is disgusting." "Well, give it back if you're not going to appreciate it," Nick huffed, glaring at Livio. Livio shook his head again and took a gentler inhale. He still hiccuped a couple of coughs deep in his chest, but held together. "Sorry." "Seriously," said Nick, frowning and turning the pack and lighter back in his jacket. "What are you doing?" "Just wanted to see if it helps," Livio sighed, cigarette upright between two fingers on the steering wheel. "I've been craving hard for the last couple days. Dunno." He took another drag, coughed, and winced. He chewed the inside of his cheek for a moment, then said, "I don't know why I just keep sitting on it and not telling you. I got kicked out of the military because of drugs." Anger and worry sparked in Nick's gut. "Well, shit, put that out," he said, waving for the cigarette. "I'm not going to be your enabler." "Ah, sorry," Livio said, and groaned, thumping his head back on the seat. "I don't think it's going to work anyway." He hesitated, then held it out to Nick. "You want the rest? I hate to waste it." "Give me that," Nick snapped. He took the half-smoked cigarette and considered it for a moment. "This is gross. Who knows what kind of nasty-ass mouth germs you got?" But he stuck it between his lips anyway. Livio chuckled. "The only ass I've kissed lately is yours, boss," he said. "Fuck off," Nick replied, but it was mild. It had been a long time since his mid-morning smoke break. The first inhale had really hit the spot. He cracked his own window and sighed it out. "Don't do that again," he said, serious now. "I'm not giving you anything you're not supposed to have." Yeah, Mom," Livio murmured, taking the next right turn and putting them on a long, peaceful stretch of country road out to the nursing home. He pressed his lips together and sighed. Smoking wasn't my problem anyway, or drinking, but I do try to keep it to no more than 2 beers and no hard stuff anyway, just in case. Nick sat there, arms crossed over his chest, considering. "You don't have to tell me about it if you don't want," he said. "Do you have meetings or something? You got support?" "Yeah," said Livio, waving a hand. "I know I just need to call my sponsor, not bum smokes like some dumb kid. I don't know." He rubbed his eyes with thumb and forefinger, looking more unhappy than Nick had seen him in a while. "It's the time of year, I think. Halloween shit. There were Halloween decorations in the hospital when—" He trailed off, gathered his words, and restarted. "Okay, so I got hurt in an exercise in the field. Really hurt, hospitalizing hurt. But the thing was, I didn't know. It only got so bad because I didn't even realize I'd been shot and just kept pushing for way too long. Too high to feel pain. The other guys knew I was like that I was like a whole different person when I was up. They even called me a different name. Livio's razzed again, right? So it turned into Razlo, and they'd be like, 'Hey man, who's going on patrol today, Livio or Razlo?' More and more it was Raz." Livio sank in his seat, looking angry now. At himself, obviously. "Anyway, everyone in the unit knew I was high like kite. Let me off the leash anyway, and I got really messed up. They did blood tests at the hospital. That was the end of that. Can't believe how politely the Corps kicked me out. I just had really high ratings. It's the only reason they cleaned up the paperwork. Went straight from the ICU to rehab. Been clean ever since." Nick only realized the cigarette was down to the filter when it scalded his finger. He hissed and stubbed it out on the inside of the door, then felt really bad about the small mark he left. He scrubbed over it with a thumb, getting rid of some soot, but not the central black spot. "Shit," he said. Livio hummed. "Yep." Nick flicked the butt out the window, felt a little bad about that too, and rolled the window up. The cab had gotten a lot quieter all at once. He leaned his head on his palm, elbow on the window ledge. "I'm really sorry, man," he said. Livio shrugged with one shoulder. "Life's a bitch." Nick looked out the window. He thought about what kind of person put their older relatives in a nursing home like this, so far out in the country, with big beautiful grounds and lovely views. Was it a kindness because the facility was so nice? Or was it just a polite, clean-on-paper way to push the ugly inevitability of death as far out of sight as possible? To keep people out of their own homes because they weren't themselves anymore. "I went to seminary," he said, apropos of nothing. Livio glanced over at him. "You enlisted, right? So I tried to enlist in God's army, I guess. You know what really made me drop out? The full crisis of faith moment?" He snorted a humorless laugh. "I'd been stealing cigarettes since I was 9, ever since I realized that smoking made hunger pangs go away for a while. And it wasn't like I was made of money when I went to seminary either. So I was just living on 30-cent ramen packets, having heart palpitations from all the sodium and the amount of coffee I was drinking to stay up studying. So one shopping trip I had a $5 left, and I bought the cheapest smokes in the case. Thought, this'll save me a little on food. I'll just have one of these instead of dinner." He stared out the window hard. Thinking about that time, it really sucked. There was a reason he made every effort not to relive it. Then I sat there in my shitty little dorm hovel, looking at the words of Jesus fucking Christ about feeding the poor, having just spent real fucking money on a drug to survive the fact that I was so hungry. And I was like, what is the point? What the hell is the point of any of this? He realized he'd gotten heated and made himself calm down. Livio sat in silence, taking it in. "Anyway," Nick said, scratching behind his ear and looking into the footwell. "That was that. Dropped out. Worked shitty jobs for a while, sucked at dating, decided I needed to do something that would actually help people. That had to be the point of life, right? Stop navel-gazing at God and start acting like Jesus said to. So I went to community college, sweet-talked my way past all the prerequisites I definitely didn't have, and got a job as an entry-level social worker. And about 6 months into that gig, I broke a guy's jaw, because everyone knew he was raping his daughter. It was obvious, but rules are rules are rules, and you can't just go around yanking kids from homes without all the due process. And this guy had money, the kid was clearly groomed, it was hard to get evidence together, and I just couldn't take it anymore. On a home visit, when it was obvious we weren't going to get anywhere again, I laid the guy flat out on the floor. It's completely insane that I didn't go to jail for it, but the guy didn't press assault charges." Nick tipped his head back and looked at the roof of the cab. "So, what can you do? Like you said, life's a bitch. Decided I'd rather work with dead people. At least if they did anything shitty in life, they've already been taken care of." There was a long minute of silence. Then Livio said, "Well, hell." "Yep. What a pair we make. St. Mike's sure knows how to turn out winners." Nick accepted the breaking of the tension and chuckled. "Hey, don't blame Miss Melanie for us being fuck-ups." "Hell no, never," Livio said firmly. He paused, then said, "Hey, when holidays come around, do you ever crave those little egg roll things?" "Lumpia? God, do I," Nick said, spirited. "I can't believe she let us help make those. What a fucking mess, right?" Up ahead, the nursing home grounds came into sight. Nick made himself remember that there was a grieving family up ahead who needed him calm, professional, and mild-mannered. He tugged at his suit jacket. "We should make those this year," Livio said, thoughtful, as he pulled into the nursing home's driveway. "How hard could it be?" "Famous last words," Nick told him. As they were getting out of the van and opening up the back doors, Livio said, "Hey, I'm sorry." "Nothing for you to be sorry about, except your face," Nick added, in the spirit of brotherly love. "Shut up. But listen, we've both been some absolute garbage, right?" "Clearly." "And then we ran into each other again for no good reason," Livio said. "And we're actually doing okay." Nick didn't say anything. "So, I don't know that says anything about fate, or how the world is, or whatever." Livio hauled the gurney out onto the sidewalk and looked at Nick over it, awkwardly earnest. "But at least it says we can do okay. And maybe we'll keep on doing okay." Nick gave him a little smile. "Yeah." Livio held out a fist, fingers down. It took a second to realize he was offering a fist bump, and when Nick returned it, he felt like a complete fool, but it made Livio grin. "Call your sponsor after this," Nick said. The moment broke, and Livio huffed, rolled his eyes. "All right, Mom." "And I'm never giving you a cigarette again." "Fine." A rapping at the window broke Nick from deep involvement in a piece of paperwork. He jumped and spun in his chair. It was a bright, pleasant October morning, so a little while earlier he'd tied the curtain back to let in more natural light. Outside the window was a familiar, spiky, tousled blonde head. Vash had leaned way over the hedges to knock on the glass. Once Nick caught sight of him, he waved. "What the—" Nick muttered, getting up. He went to the window. Muffled and faint, Vash called, "I didn't realize this was your office window." What the hell are you doing out there? Nick demanded. What? Vash put a hand to his ear. Nick blew out several curses and searched the window for a fastener. He'd never tried opening it. Hang on, he half-yelled, feeling across the top of the frame. At last he found the swivel latch and worked it open with some difficulty. It was rusty and long unused. With some wrangling, he managed to lift the bottom part of the frame. He ducked to look through the open part, one knee on the love seat under the window. What the hell are you doing? He asked again. Vash leaned his forearms on the hedge like it was an insubstantial countertop and grinned. He said, I'd never seen this curtain open. Didn't know this was you. You've got a good view. He jerked a thumb over his shoulder at his own parking lot. Nick was grateful his complexion didn't show blushing very well. Yeah, so? Vash just laughed. Well, let me know if you spot anyone shoplifting, he said. Sometimes flower pots seem to grow legs and wander off on their own. Said Nick. Sure? Vash looked around the space. Since I'm here, I've been meaning to ask, who does your grounds upkeep? Nick blinked. No idea, he said. Brad handles it. Oh, okay. It's just, they don't edge your sidewalks, but you've got Bermuda in your grass mix, you know? It's rhizomatous, so it sends out runners. It can break up concrete. Also, they top your crepe myrtles. You can tell from the knotting at the top of the trunk, see, before they branch? Topping's not good for them. Sometimes people call it crepe murder. Nick stared at him. What are you saying exactly? Vash flushed. I mean, it's pretty good work all around, just suggesting some notes you could give them. Sounds more like you want the job. What? Vash laughed, too high. No, and people tend to commit crepe murder in the fall, so I'm just being timely, that's all. Trying to catch it before it happens. Nick slowly grinned. Sure you didn't just come over to see me? Vash laughed again and started to back up. No, I mean, I saw you, thought I'd say hi. That's it. Okay, Nick said, clearly disbelieving. Vash started to turn and walk away. He raised a hand to wave goodbye. Just tell your lawn guys what I said. Fine. While Nick was wrestling the window shut again, Jessica stuck her head into his office, brow pinched. Who are you talking to? Nick just shook his head, futzing with the latch. Hey, Jess, you got the phone number for whoever mows our grass? A few days later, Jessica knocked on his door and poked her head in. Mr. Wolfwood, are you busy? I've said you can call me... Nick looked up, saw her white, innocent face, and sighed. He knew a lot of people found it hard not to use honorifics with their seniors. It just made Nick feel so... senior. Ugh. Never mind. What's up? Oh, it's Mr. Sovram on the phone. He just wanted to know if you're busy. Nick opened his mouth, closed it. No? What's he want? He said he was coming over. Why? Jessica shrugged. 5 minutes later, there was another knock. At least this time, Nick was ready for him. He opened the door and was not ready for him, actually, because he did not anticipate Vash to be a walking tree. Nick jumped back. Vash carefully sidestepped through the door with his 2 armloads of enormous potted plants, spat a leaf out of his face, and said, Hi! What? Nick asked flatly. Vash grinned. Really late office warming present? I just noticed you don't have any plants in here, and then I didn't know which one you'd like better, so I brought both. Except if you don't like either, I have other recommendations, or you don't have to have an office plant, but they're good for air quality. Nick awkwardly reached out and took one of the 2 huge pots out of the crook of Vash's arm. He felt like someone who didn't know how to hold a baby must feel. The pot was heavy, and the sprawling leaves were hard to see past. No, I mean, I'm happy to take one. I just don't know anything about keeping the stuff alive. I'll probably kill it. I hate to... Nah, Vash said confidently, hoisting the other pot against his hip like a toddler. Nick noted that he was wearing his work gloves, thick brown leather things that looked so well worn it was like they were molded to his hands. That one's an aglaonema, this one's a jerkina, a corn plant, and they both hate the sun, so they're great for inside. Knives keeps the back office full of these buddies. In fact, I just split these a couple weeks ago, so they got lots of root space. You don't have to do anything except dump a cup of water in the pot every couple of days or so for like a year, maybe 2 years. Then they might need splitting again. Oh, okay. Nick looked around. He shuffled a few steps over towards his desk and set the aglaonema down next to the side, in front of his small trash can. He had to admit, it looked good there. What had felt enormous in his hands was actually a good 6 inches shorter than the height of his desk, and it fit in the spot like it was made for it. He glanced at Vash for a second opinion. Look good? Vash was beaming, and once again it was that real smile, the one that reached his eyes. Nick's stomach writhed uncomfortably. Looks great, Vash said. You want this one, or is this too much? I probably overdid it, huh? Nah, it's fine. What about by the couch? Vash deposited the trachea where Nick pointed. He eyed the spot, then shifted the plant a foot or so to the left. It looked better. Vash waved a hand at the window and said, "This gets afternoon sun, so just don't leave the curtains open after noon or it'll sunburn, but otherwise it should be fine." "Okay." Nick looked around the office. Having a couple of spots of greenery did immediate wonders to make the place more welcoming. He truly had no idea why he didn't think of it before. He grinned. "I like it. Thanks, Vash." When he looked over at Vash, the man was distinctly pink in the cheeks. He crossed his arms, looking pleased with himself. "You're welcome," he said. He looked at Nick for a beat too long. "So, I gotta get back to it." He edged toward the door. "See you later?" "Hey," said Nick. "You want to get lunch tomorrow?" Vash blinked. Yeah, I'd like that." "I should really eat food that isn't top ramen every now and then," said Nick. "Maybe you can point me to some other good places?" Vash perked up even more. "Heck yeah, I know a ton of spots. What do you like?" "Everything," said Nick. "Man after my own heart," Vash said, grinning. "Except I don't have much of a sweet tooth." Vash clutched his chest dramatically, as though wounded to the core. "I can't believe you would say that to me," he gasped. "How could you?" Laughing, Nick walked with him to the door. "Just means more for you, right?" Vash's tune changed quick. He got sly and pensive. "Touché," he said. "Get back to work, broomhead," Nick told him. "I thought we agreed on Spiky." "I said no such thing," Nick said breezily. "You're so mean," Vash told him, and pouted, actually pouted, before turning to leave. He waved over his shoulder. "Talk to you later." After he'd left, Nick almost closed his office door, but left it open a crack, on a whim, and stood there for a minute longer. At the front desk, he heard Jessica stop Vash and say something complimentary about the plants he'd brought. He couldn't quite make out Vash's answer. Then Jess asked something, and Vash distinctly said, "Sure." The following day, a dozen potted chrysanthemums appeared at the front door, half bright yellow and half a dusty plum purple. Jessica hummed happily as she placed them all around the front office, entry door, and a couple in the kitchen. Nick swiped a yellow one to put on one of the end tables in his office. When he tied back his curtain, he was sure Vash could see it, even from across the street. A month passed. A month of occasional lunches with Vash, no more than twice a week, and of watering his new plants, keeping his nose to the grindstone in the office, honoring and burying so many dead he's already losing count. A month of days slowly cooling, long rains, yellowing trees. Halloween passed without much fanfare. Only one time did a gaggle of sugar-buzzed high schoolers wander into the funeral home to giggle and ask if it was haunted. Nick checked in with Livio often, but he seemed to have gotten past some mental hurdle for the time being. He assured Nick he went to his Narcotics Anonymous meetings religiously and wasn't in a bad place, all things considered. He was just ready for the bats and ghosts and vampires to come down off the porches. Which they did, quickly, and all that was left was hay bales and pumpkins on front steps, and the odd tree that had been defaced with toilet paper. For a month, Nick kept trying to stay late and work, but since he had given an inch once, Jessica and Brad now knew that if they pushed hard enough, he would give. So they didn't let him work 7 days a week, or stay late into the night more than 4 times a week at most. One free Wednesday night was spent experiencing a true Strife and Thompson poker game. Merrill, the card shark, Millie, the cute drunk, Vash, the even cuter drunk. Plus a handful of others, close friends and friends of friends, all piling into the warmth of a loving, if eccentric, home, just to goof off and have fun. Nick had gone home that night dizzy with way more than just alcohol. He couldn't remember the last time he'd ever been somewhere so good. It made his chest ache and kept him awake until the wee hours of the morning, at which point drunk had tipped the scale over to hungover, and he'd had to go puke up his guts until the sun rose. Vash, Nick had noticed at the time, did not play any cards. He just watched the game, drank, and enjoyed himself. Hard to manipulate the cards, Nick assumed, with those damn gloves on. Poor circulation, Nick's ass. Something was up, but Vash didn't want Nick to know it, and it stung a little. But Nick told himself that Vash was not obligated to sate his curiosity, and continued to not ask. Vash seemed to have memorized when Nick took his smoke breaks, and would jog across the street to come chat for 5 minutes. It made Nick insanely tempted to double up on cigarettes to make the break longer, but he wrestled that urge down and just smoked his one cig as slowly as humanly possible. Vash made him laugh so much, so hard, it was as good as another cup of coffee for perking him up for the rest of the day. But beyond that, Vash also aggravated him beyond belief, because the man was so self-effacing, and Nick hated to hear it. Nick's gentle objections quickly turned into aggressive praise. It always made Vash go red in the face, and Nick couldn't help privately competing with himself to see how flustered he could make Vash by arguing with his self-deprecation. Brad was polite but quiet on the topic of Vash's constant visits. Jessica was polite, but always just shy of glum when the topic of Vash came up, unless the man actually came into the building and she got to talk to him. Then she lit up. Livio was, of course, intolerable. "Nick, you're fucking killing me," Livio moaned at him over the hood of the van one afternoon. "What? I haven't done shit to you." Livio laid his head against the car and whined. "How can I live vicariously through your successes if you don't tap that?" "I'm not... What? Hey, fuck you! Get your own dumb crush, you himbo!" Livio attempted to give him a wedgie, but Nick was too fast to be caught. On very rare occasions, Vash was not at work. Nick could count his absences on one hand, but they all stood out like sore thumbs. Paperwork was more of a chore, the day felt longer, talking to vendors made him more irritable, and talking to the bereaved made him more depressed. He told himself to get over it, shake it off, because it was ridiculous to put his own happiness and ability to be a good person onto someone else. It wasn't that he assigned that much responsibility to Vash, really. It was just that Vash brought a ball of sunshine with him wherever he went, and Nick couldn't help feeling like days without him were a little overcast. On one of those days, Nick had only found out Vash was gone because he'd wandered across the street to see if Vash wanted to grab lunch at the diner. Inside, a woman he hadn't met before was working the checkout counter. She was tall and willowy, with long brown hair loosely tied back with a ribbon. She wore a long blue skirt and a fancy blouse with puffy cap sleeves and a peplum waist, all covered by a ruffle-edged work apron. Nick couldn't help thinking she did not look like she'd ever stuck her hands into dirt in her life, but he also didn't believe Vash would hire someone squeamish about dirt. "Can I help you find anything today?" she asked Nick smoothly. Hi," he said. "Yeah, the owner, actually." "Which one?" "Oh, Vash. Just wanted to ask him something." She pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm sorry, he's out right now." "Oh." Nick scuffed a foot. "I guess just let him know I came by whenever he gets back. Nick Wolfwood from..." He jerked a thumb out the door, toward the funeral home. Her eyes whitened. "Oh, you! Sorry, I didn't know who you were. I'll tell him, but just so you know, he won't be back until Friday." "Oh," said Nick, taken aback. "Okay, good for him. He needs to take a break." "Well," she said, her eyes tightening at the corners. "Not really. Doctor's appointment." Nick's stomach did a 360 aerial swoop. "Shit," he blurted. "Is he okay?" "Yes, he's fine. It's a routine thing." "For 2 days?" Nick thought to himself, still a little panicked, but he didn't pry. "Okay," he said. "Well, thoughts and prayers and all that." "I'm Elizabeth, by the way," she said. "Nice to meet you. It's good to put a face to the name." "Huh?" "Vash talks about you a lot," Elizabeth said, and Nick's brain derailed. Huh?" Elizabeth gave him a small smile. Was he imagining it, or did she look knowing? Suggestive. He stared at her. She said, "I'll let him know you were thinking of him." Nick retreated quickly, fumbling his polite goodbyes. He spent the next hour all but vibrating out of his office chair until Brad brought him a sandwich and told him off for forgetting to eat. Oh, right. He'd gone over to ask about lunch in the first place. He barely tasted the sandwich.